All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we're taking a deep dive into the sometimes crazy world of Reddit relationship advice. We're going to be specifically looking at the subreddit Radvice. And that's the corner of the internet where people go to kind of spill their guts and, ask for wisdom from the internet masses, which can be pretty brutal. Um, but it's also fascinating to see how this digital space has really become a modern-day oracle. Giving opinions and pronouncements on everything from what career you should choose to, what to do when love goes wrong. And love gone wrong is exactly what we're talking about today. Our case study comes from a user named ThisDunkDude, and he has turned to the Reddit hive mind because he is getting some seriously mixed signals from his ex-girlfriend. So, expert speaker, you've spent quite a bit of time in these online forums. What strike you about the community's response to ThisDunkDude's situation?
Well, it's really interesting. It's like you're getting a glimpse into a whole bunch of different human experiences all at the same time. You see cynicism from people who have obviously had their hearts broken. You see empathy from those who have maybe been in a similar situation. And then there's just a whole lot of tough love thrown in there for good measure.
Yeah, let's break this down a little bit. So, ThisDunkDude is saying that he was in like this truly amazing relationship with his ex-girlfriend. But she broke up with him about 2 months ago, saying that she needed space. The classic, it's not you, it's me line, right?
Right.
But then things take a bit of a turn. She starts texting him again. They start hanging out. She even tells him that she misses him. But then on the other hand, she's also saying she wants more no contact. So, no wonder the guy's confused.
Yeah, and the Reddit community does not hold back. I mean, you get responses that range from, she's string you along to, you're just a backup plan.
Oh, yeah, they can be brutal. But I kind of like the blunt honesty. It's like getting a virtual slap in the face. It forces ThisDunkDude, and probably a lot of us listening, to kind of confront some uncomfortable truths.
Yeah, and it's really interesting how many people who are commenting on this post are recognizing the same pattern. Like they've seen this before, either in their own lives or, reading countless other Reddit threads. It's almost like they've developed this collective wisdom about, the signs of emotional manipulation.
Yeah, and there was this one comment that really stood out to me. Somebody said that ThisDunkDude was basically like a branch on a monkey tree. Just one stop on his ex's journey through the jungle of relationship.
Ouch.
I know, right? It's harsh, but it's kind of a perfect way to describe that feeling of being disposable.
It really is. And that image is so powerful because it's something we can all relate to. That feeling of being just one option out of many.
And this brings up a point that a lot of the commenters are making about self-worth. They're telling ThisDunkDude that he needs to recognize that he deserves to be someone's priority, not just, a convenient option.
Exactly.
So do you think that's kind of the overall message here? To know your worth and set boundaries?
Absolutely. It's about realizing when something's not good for you anymore and having the courage to walk away from it, even if it hurts.
Yeah, there was another comment that I thought was really interesting. It basically said that ThisDunkDude shouldn't try to revive a relationship that's just full of confusion. This person was saying that ThisDunkDude deserves to be with someone who is excited to be with him, someone who chooses him without any hesitation.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's almost like a call to action, like he needs to demand clarity and refuse to settle for ambiguity.
I like that. Demanding clarity. And I think that resonates with a lot of people that need to feel wanted and cherished.
This deep dive into Reddit is really turning into an emotional roller coaster. There's so much brutal honesty, but also these little nuggets of wisdom. It's like a crash course in relationships with a side of internet snark. But before we go too deep into what the Reddit hive mind is saying, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. And hey, while we're at it, why not hit that subscribe button and give us a like? We'd really appreciate it. You can find more deep dives like this one on Shauna Polidge's YouTube channel, Voices of the Soul.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Reddit relationship advice. Now, before we went to those sponsor messages, we were talking about how the Reddit community was responding to ThisDunkDude's situation, that whole mess of mixed signals and uncertainty. And one thing that really jumped out at me was how much people were talking about self-worth. It was like everyone was telling ThisDunkDude to recognize his own value and not let himself be treated like an emotional yo-yo.
Yeah, like, hey, you deserve more than just breadcrumbs of affection. One commenter even said, and I'm paraphrasing here, you deserve a woman who chooses you, who's excited to be with you, who wants to be with you as much as you want to be with her.
Wow, yeah, that's a good one.
right?
It's like a reminder that you have the right to expect that level of respect and commitment from someone you're in a relationship with. It's easy to get caught up in the hurt and confusion of a breakup, but sometimes you need that outside perspective, that virtual slap on the shoulder from the internet to remind you that you deserve to be with someone who really values and appreciates you.
It's like having this huge group of friends all over the world, all with their own experiences and insights. And they're there to offer support and a little dose of reality. And sometimes that's exactly what you need. Theston Dude actually mentioned something in his post that I think we should talk about a little bit more. He said that the fight that led to the breakup started because he was uncomfortable with some stuff his ex-girlfriend had told him about a past relationship. What do you think? Could that be a reason why she's hesitant to really commit now?
That's a good question. It's definitely possible. It sounds like there might be some deeper issues going on about trust and vulnerability. Think about it. If that stunk dude reacted badly when she tried to share something personal with him, it could have made her feel insecure, like she couldn't trust him to be there for her emotionally.
That makes sense. I mean, relationships are built on trust and communication. If one person feels like they can't share their feelings without being judged, then that's a big problem.
Exactly. And that brings up another important question for all of us. How do we create a space in our relationships where both people feel safe being open and honest with each other? It's not always easy, but it's so important for building a strong connection with someone.
So if we had to boil down all this Reddit wisdom into some advice for Thetan and Dude, and maybe for all of us who are trying to figure out this whole relationship thing, what would it be?
Okay, well, I think the main message is this. You have to put your own well-being first. Don't settle for crumbs of affection or let yourself be strung along. You deserve to be with someone who chooses you wholeheartedly and without any hesitation.
Yeah, know your worth and don't be afraid to walk away from something that's hurting you more than it's helping you.
And remember that clear communication is so important. If you don't know where you stand with someone, don't be afraid to talk about it openly and honestly. Tell them what you need and what you expect from the relationship.
Yeah, trying to avoid those conversations will only cause more problems in the long run. Sometimes being direct is the best way to fix a relationship that's gone off track.
And maybe the most important thing to remember is that you're not alone in this. There are so many people out there, both in the real world and online, who have been through similar situations. They can offer you support and guidance.
It's like we're all in this together, this crazy, messy, beautiful journey of love and relationships. We're all learning from each other's experiences, offering a shoulder to cry on when we need it. But it's also important to remember that not all advice is created equal, even if it comes from the all-knowing Reddit hive mind.
Right. Every situation is different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly. You have to gather information, think about your own needs and values, and then make the decision that feels right for you.
And don't be afraid to talk to a therapist or counselor if you're having trouble dealing with a difficult relationship. Sometimes having that objective expert opinion can make a big difference.
That's good advice. All this talk about relationships has really got me thinking about how different people express and experience love. It's so easy to assume that our partner wants to be loved the same way we do. But that's not always true.
You're so right. And this actually goes back to something we were talking about earlier. That stunk dude was always showering his ex with gifts and telling her how much he loved her.
Yeah, and on the surface, that seems like the perfect boyfriend, someone who's thoughtful and affectionate. But what if that wasn't what she needed? What if her love language was different?
Exactly. And if those needs aren't being met, even the most well-intentioned gestures can backfire. It can start to feel suffocating or even make the other person resentful.
So I think one of the biggest lessons we can learn from Thestonk Dude is the importance of understanding and respecting each other's love languages. What feels loving and affirming to one person might feel totally different to another. It's about finding that balance between expressing your love and respecting your partner's boundaries.
It's a constant learning process. It takes open communication and a willingness to grow and change, both as individuals and as a couple.
I think we've officially reached the bottom of the Reddit relationship advice, well, for today. We've seen it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but I hope you, our listeners, have learned a few things along the way. But before we wrap things up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier. Distant Dude's ex-girlfriend broke up with him because she felt overwhelmed by the relationship. He said he was always very attentive and affectionate, showering her with gifts and constantly telling her he loved her. Now, that might sound like the ideal partner, right? Someone who's thoughtful and dotes on you. But as we've been discussing, what feels loving to one person can actually feel stifling to another.
That's a great point. It's like a paradox. Sometimes too much love, or at least love that's expressed in the wrong way, can actually push someone away. It shows how important it is to understand each other's needs and preferences.
It's like this delicate dance. You have to find that sweet spot between expressing your affection and respecting your partner's boundaries. So as we say goodbye to Thested Dude and his confusing I want to leave you with one final thought. Don't be afraid to question all those societal norms and expectations about relationships, the ones we often just accept without even thinking about them. Don't be afraid to have those honest conversations about your needs and desires, even if they feel awkward or uncomfortable. And most importantly, remember that you deserve love and connection that feels real and fulfilling. And hey, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the ups and downs of relationships, don't forget to subscribe to Voices of the Soul on Shauna Polish's YouTube channel. We've got a ton of other great conversations just like this one.
We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the world of human experience. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those hearts open.
Welcome back to Voices of the Soul, where we like to take those deep dives into all those messy parts of life. And, those beautiful parts, those parts that leave us scratching our heads, just those things about being human. And today we have been trying to unravel the story of Thested Dude and his ex-girlfriend. We've been looking at all the advice that the Reddit community has been giving him.
Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
It really has.
I mean, we've seen everything, the empathy, the cynicism, the anger, the genuine advice.
That's amazing.
It really shows how these online communities can bring people together. And, sometimes they challenge us and sometimes they even make us laugh at how crazy things can get.
What's really interesting to me is how this deep dive has made us think about our own ideas about relationships. We all have these ideas about what love should look like.
Right.
But in reality, it's usually a lot more complicated than that.
Absolutely. And I think Thested Dude's story is a perfect example of that. He thought he was doing all the right things, being attentive, buying gifts, expressing his love at all the time. But it just wasn't happening.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, those love languages. What he thought was loving and caring might have felt completely different to her.
Yeah.
And that's why communication is so important. It's not enough to just express love. You have to express it in a way that the other person understands and appreciates.
Exactly. And that means being willing to listen and to observe and to have those conversations about what each of you needs.
Even if those conversations are a little awkward.
Yeah.
You know what? This whole discussion is making me think about all the other relationships in our lives, too. Not just romantic ones. I mean, this applies to friendships and family and even work relationships.
That's a good point. It's about recognizing that everyone has their own way of giving and receiving love and support.
And appreciation.
Yeah, and the better we understand that, the stronger our connections will be with the people around us.
It's like we're all in this big dance together, this dance of human connection. We're all just trying to figure out the steps and find a rhythm that works for everyone. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Red relationship advice, I want to leave you with this. Don't be afraid to question those things that society tells us about relationships. Those unwritten rules that we just accept without even thinking about them? Don't be afraid to have those honest conversations about what you need and what you want, even if it feels a little scary or uncomfortable. And most importantly, remember that you deserve love and connection that feels real and fulfilling. And that's it for this week's deep dive into the world of human experience. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to subscribe to Voices of the Soul on Shauna Polish's YouTube channel. We'll be back next week with another thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those hearts open.